I was in Ghent at configuration management camp earlier this week, Monday, Tuesday. I saw most of the usual people that I would see there. Always nice to hang out, see people. They had a trailer with Belgian waffles, very good. I only ate in that cafeteria once. I got a little tiny lasagna in a metal thing. It wasn't like the best choice, but
No, like
but it was fine.
cafeteria lasagna. Come on, that's terrible.
I know, but it was okay. It's one of those things. There's a category of food that I don't really eat very much at all, and so when I do eat it, it's kind of novel and okay. And I'm not disagreeing with the sentiment. The lasagna was difficult, but like I finally got the chance to give this talk that I've been working on for a little while about how much public versus private cloud there is. Now, people who subscribe to my newsletter, if you go to newsletter.cote.io, which I need to get some subscribers because I've lost a few. Maybe that's because I've been talking about this too much or other things. But right now it's at 889 people. We just need to have like maybe 11, 12, or like 300 more. That'll be a fun number to have. So you got to subscribe to that. Now, this whole talk, I gathered together. I didn't even think they were going to accept this talk, but I gathered together a bunch of charts, just going over like where the workloads are. Or our friend Donnie was like, workloads. Come on, old man. And I think he was right. You can't say workloads, but I say it anyways. The applications. And I think, I'm not going to go over those results. They're going to post the video at some point. You can go see the stream and scrub to find it. It's basically, I don't know, 40-60 or 50-50, depending on the charts you have. But that's not the important thing. I want to get some consulting from the two sports people. Now, I know baseball's not y'all's game. You're more into like, I don't know, tennis and water polo or whatever. But I tried to take seriously, to make a joke, sometimes you got to take things seriously. I tried to take seriously this early inning situation, the first inning. So I charted out going all the way back to 2010, for the time I allocated to this. I didn't have access to either Google or OpenAI deep research or whatever. So maybe I'll use that next time to look this up. But I found our old friend, Peter Ulander. He had a quote when he was at cloud.com that we're in the first inning of cloud 2010. And then you can chart this all the way through. I think they stopped saying it. You'd think, having made these slides, I would have them in front of me to see when the inning thing stopped. But at some point, it did switch over instead
to the second inning.
Well, it switched over to a 10K.
What?
Well, that was in 2023. How do you say it? Adam Selipsky. He was saying we're in the first few steps of a 10K. However, in that same year, the IBM said cloud is probably in its fifth inning. So IBM's like living in the future.
Yeah, I mean, so IBM's calling for like total cloud consolidation in 20 years, whereas Selipsky's like, we are 2,000 years away,
something like that. And then, but then this past month, since it's February 5th, Matt Garman, AWS CEO, he said that we're still at the early stages of what the business can be. So,
but no sports metaphor.
No sports metaphor. I think maybe they have some AWS comms people, and they must listen to this podcast. They were like, "Whoa, these guys! For once, they've got kind of a good point about this inning thing." But
for once,
I thought what I would do.
I like that they have listened to what were we on 505 episodes, and they're like finally they made a point.
They just need recommendations. They just wait the whole time. So I thought what I would do is I would chart out. Let's say let's go with, if we're still early and we're going to stick to a baseball game, I would take early. I want to walk through this logic, but then I'm going to get to the question. I would take early to mean we're in inning 2 or 3. Now, this is because, and I was in, Belgium, so I felt the need to go over American baseball stuff. It's like you got 9 innings, right? Now, you can, of course, go overtime, and the longest game ever, I think, went 27 innings, or 26 innings, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that was like in 1920.
But that also assumes it's a tie after 9 innings.
Right, exactly.
We're not tracking for that.
But, all these quotes, they haven't said anything about a tie or not. They just strictly on the innings. Now, I guess you could say, what are we tying up against? Oh, and I haven't thought of this. Here we go, Matt Ray.
Workloads.
because possibly we're at a 50-50 split between where the workloads are. We might be tied so far. How long is
what if it's a race against on-prem?
I was going to say, Cote, when you're giving this talk, Cote, just to slightly change the terminology just a little bit to say baseball, you should always say it's like, this doesn't assume extra innings. So that's how
extra
basically.
Okay.
So it's not really overtime in baseball, right? You just say something like, but there could always be extra innings, and who knows what that means, right?
That's right. Exactly.
That's the way to go with that.
I think maybe if someone nails quantum computing, we're going to be in extra innings.
You would call that a walk-off home run.
A walk-off home run. Okay. So I thought let's just assume a 9-inning game. We're not going to go crazy, right? And I wanted to chart out. So depending on which inning we're in, and again, I take early to mean the third inning, second or third, because if you're in the first inning, you're like, I'm in the first inning, right? Mm-hmm. You're never in the first of something. You're like, we're early. So we got to be past the first inning. And then if you were in the fourth or fifth inning, you would be like, out of 9, I don't think in base 9, but you'd be like, we're halfway, right?
Yeah.
And so like, it's got to be the second or the third. So I thought what I would do is I would go with like the third. We're in the third inning, and then I somehow have to count. So I want, as you're getting to, Matt Ray, I need to figure out when this goddamn game is over, because it's been going on for a long time. And so I thought I would do some, liberal artsy charts where I couldn't figure out what the kind of rate, how long innings usually are, and what the rate of change is as the game goes on. Like, do the innings get longer? Do they get faster? Right? Like my observation with other sports is the longer the game goes, the slower it takes to finish, because you keep taking timeouts and you're just like meandering around and you're just fucking about. Right? So like the last part of the game takes the longest to do, kind of like cloud migrations, where you can move 90% of it, and then it takes you 10 years to move the other 10% of what you're doing. So no one would really tell me, and by that I mean the 2 people who responded to this. So now, what little I know of baseball is nothing. So I want to ask you too, big sports fans, what is the rate that I should figure for innings 4 to 9 when I'm doing this? Because then I feel like I can make a pretty good chart. If we had some, I don't know how to do a Monte Carlo simulation, but I think if we could figure out like, well, you're looking at like a 2% lengthening on average, or no, actually the innings, they double, or no, they go faster. Like what are we doing here as far as the speed of innings?
I'm gonna go. My non-scientific take is it's probably a wash, and they're probably all about the same. Because sometimes like, first inning, second inning, one team just unloads on them, and the rest of the game is like, let's just get this thing over with. Right? It's like, oh, they're up 10 runs. We're not going to score 10 runs.
So you don't really put in the efforts. You're just kind of like,
you're just
building up the numbers so that you can get more runs.
Yeah.
Is that right? You want to get that on your scorecard?
Yeah.
The beauty of the baseball metaphor here, and I guess maybe this is why the executives have chosen it, is like baseball being an untimed game, as Matt was talking about. It's like every inning could, in theory, be infinite time. Like, if you don't get 3 outs, you could, in theory, play the game forever. Much, I think, cricket has something similar. So that does draw quite a difficulty in creating some type of like interval around it, because
an interval. There you go.
So it's like, well, you'd probably just, like Matt was saying, you have to allude to some type of average. Well, an average inning takes 2 years. Again, cloud world, right? Like if you started in 20, if we go back to AWS, right? So that's 15 years ago, something like that, something on the order of like 2010, 2015, something like that. So if you said that started it 10 years into it, if we're still in the third inning, so every 3 innings is 10 years, maybe you could say that. You think it's maybe every 3 innings, 5 years? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then what? Okay. So I did a chart. Maybe we'll put this in the show art on various different things. Now, I think the point that you two are making, well, I mean, more or less, Matt Ray mostly said it. If the innings are basically, I don't want to say constant, but if it's a wash, so you kind of count them as the same length.
Yeah.
What we're looking at is based on, I think I based cloud starting in 2006 when Amazon S3 launched. Whatever, you got to pick something, right? And I always forget if it was S3 or EC2 that was first. or if it was some
Yeah.
networking thing or what, it doesn't matter, right? So like, if we are in inning 3 and we're still in inning 3 and it is 2025, then you can start to calculate how long these things take. And I think if you use the Matt Ray method, it's pretty much the same. We're looking at 2068 to end this game.
But what is the end of the game? That's what I want. Is that when cloud wins? Or is that when Amazon wins?
I'll get to that because there is a consideration there. Now, the fastest rate is what I'm going to call the IBM 1-to-1 rate. And the 1-to-1 model assumes that after this initial stuff, you're just doing 1 inning a year, right? Like you just speed up, right? Now, there's another model where I call it I think it's the doubling rate. And that is like every year it gets until it gets down to 1, you reduce it. So normally it would take 10 years and now it's 5 and then it's 2.5, or whatever, so something like that. And so, I just had to come up with something because I don't understand innings.
Maybe IBM's just counting it down to when it's game over for them.
Right. Well, yes. And so now if we go with the IBM Matt Ray method, right, it becomes constant from this point on to the future. We're looking at 2042 to finish. Right.
Okay.
That's what we have. So
it's more reasonable. We've
got a big range. It either comes out to 2027, we're going to be done, or 2068, somewhere in that range. Now, to your point, Matt Ray, when I was going over this, I was looking at the Matt Garman quote, and I think you've identified something that popped in my head. He says, we're just at the early stages of what that business can be. Now, he doesn't mean workloads. He means revenue. Right. So like maybe and I'm sure they've done a lot of research. They've got they brought in the barking dogs. They did some PR facts. They thought about customers a lot, customer first. And then they had a chart and they were like, okay, we've done the research. The business, like no more inning stuff, but the total amount of revenue we're going to get, that's what we're targeting. We're early in that inning. But then the question becomes, what is the maximum revenue? Right? Or, is it, what do you think? What would our friend Jamin Bell say? Are we looking at $1 trillion, Brandon?
I think that's what I usually work at. Like, cause I think, we have to update it. We're something around, 300 billion, total cloud revenues across everything. So let's say it's something around that, altogether. So you could say you're around 30% on your way.
I like this because I maybe before I present this again, I need to come up with a model where we first start with the total revenue, and I can just pull some IDC stuff, or maybe I can and then we can figure out the CAGR, the rates of change that happen, and then we can map that into the baseball metaphor, right? And then we can figure out, okay, so based on the innings, we know the end, to your point, Matt Ray, the revenue, and we know the rate of change, the rate of growth for that revenue, and then we can figure out how many more innings that we have. And we'll calculate that pretty easily, I think.
Well, listen, Cote, I want to maybe quickly propose an alternative way to map this for your consideration. It was like, what if we just took growth rate and sort of use growth rate as the bucket of the inning you're in? So if you're in triple digits or higher growth rate, you're in the first inning, right? That's definitely the first inning. If you're in what I would call high double digits growth rate, maybe 80%, right? Maybe that's second and third inning.
Yeah.
And then fourth, fifth, and sixth is sort of like starting to be like, lower double digits, right? 30%, 20%, 18, something along those lines, which is like kind of where I think we are today. And so then again, back to being an untimed game, you can stay in these innings for as long as you want. As long as the growth rate, sort of like hovers there, you just kind of keep staying there. And then as you kind of get towards the end, when you start to drop down into the single digits of growth rate, maybe that's the 7th or 8th, and maybe when you start to flatline or go down, maybe that's the final 9th inning. So that would be a way to do it.
And that's when you bring in your closer to just shut out the competition and lock it down.
Right. That's private equity being the closer. You bring in private equity to close out. They just close it out, right?
No. Private equity is a fastball to the head.
Yeah, sure. Maybe that's what it is. So based on that, maybe we'll talk about clown earnings here in a second, but like we would say, I think we're in the middle. We're in like the 3rd or 4th inning. That's the way to think of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
When do they have the bench clearing brawl?
I think we've got a lot of models that we could do here, and I think maybe before the next time I give this talk, maybe I'll make a transcript of what we just talked about, and I'll give it to ChatGPT, and I'll be like, make me some charts.
Oh,
No, then you say,
that.
ChatGPT, please explain baseball to me.
Well, hey, give us a little meta commentary behind the scenes. When you were presenting this, were people paying attention, or were they just like, I have no idea what he's talking about?
I think, I think people were paying attention.
Okay.
I think there weren't a lot of people in the room, which is good that there was a recording. Because there's always a lot of people on the internet. But
well, it's like it's a new presentation. You're taking it on the road. You're working it out, working out the kinks. You don't want to take your best material to
now we did have our friend John Willis in the front row. He knows he was wearing a New York Yankees hat. Which doesn't necessarily say a lot because everyone wears that. But like I know he knows baseball. So he had a few notes and he was smiling a little bit. So I think he was trying to pay attention and calculate it. So that was good. But yeah, I think like you're saying, Brandon, it's a good first run. I think there's some improvements. This is like the after game interview. I think I was up there. I was giving the presentation, moving through the slides, and I think you're always looking to improve. I think next time I'm just going to hit each slide and just do a little better. You just get through them and then it ends.
I like it, Dan. We'll just quit minor correction. That would be your post game interview. That's what
post game. What did I call it?
After game does not. It doesn't work with your metaphor. Say like, in the post game interview, it's like we gave it all I had, coach. The slides really thought went well. We left it on the field. People really like the baseball metaphor, but we can improve. We'll do better next time.
Yeah, the HDMI hookup flawless, and sometimes you walk a little too far and the clicker doesn't work, but then you just come back in. It's okay,
We will do that. You know what, Coach? One day when we're at a conference together and you've given a presentation, we will conduct a proper post game interview, and we'll post it. Maybe that will be our first YouTube short or something else, or Instagram reel that we actually, or TikTok that we actually post. That would be good. The Cote post game, post presentation interview would be great.
That would be good. Well, it's quite fortuitous, if that's the right word, that we're discussing this because there were cloud earnings that came out this week. I wish, maybe I should have paid attention and worked that into the model. I mean, I think what I need to do is I'm going to call it a living model where every time, the big threes, the growth numbers come out, I can just plug it into the model and we can readjust to maybe I'll have a whole newsletter based around this, which inning are we in, or when is this goddamn game going to end, and we can readjust. and it looks like the game's going to go on a little bit longer unless AWS picks up the slack. Is that the right baseball terminology? Are you always picking up slack? That. Okay. Because it looks like the expected growth rates of Microsoft and Google a little down. They're still doing good. They're going spanning time. They're moving the ball around, showing some hustle. I guess you don't move the ball around in baseball, do you?
They're getting some hits. They're putting some runs on the board.
Yeah, their box score is still going to be good, but not as good as we hoped for. And I think I listened to the Ben Thompson overview of the Google stuff. I think he's always finding little nuggets. I think the one nugget he found is that their CFO said that they, to summarize it, they didn't have enough hardware to meet demand for AI stuff. And I think this is maybe a broader thing, which I don't know if all the AI people got together after next week and they're like, never mind a fastball to the head. We got to lock this down. Like, what are we going to say that shows that everything's okay? And maybe what they're getting, and probably true as well. They're just like, well, we have so much demand, we can't even satisfy it. So Jevons paradox. Let's see how that works out. And I don't know. It looks like, I don't know if Matt Ray Diallo has looked at his how do we like to say it? NVIDIA.
I'm
however.
out. Yeah.
And like how's it looking? Has it gone back up? Give us an update from the
it went down a little, and I sold, and it is still hovering around where I sold. So I'm not. I don't have any regrets. If it drops 10%, I have a buy-in, but that doesn't seem to be happening. So I so far so good. I'm not looking stupid.
Well, quick follow-up from last week. We did get, I think we talked about last week that, hey, it would take a little time for people to like try to replicate it. So Semi-Analysis, which is one of the aforementioned Ben Thompson's, one of his favorite sites, They have come out with a pretty lengthy write-up. And so to just summarize it, it's something basically says that like, hey, it probably took them billions of dollars too. They just don't want to release the fact that they've got all these chips that they're not supposed to have. So they did not, if you will, release that part. So the part they released was only the kind of like, oh, we did it all for 5 million. It's like, we did it for 5 million after spending maybe not billions. That's a little bit, hundreds of millions, something of the order of magnitude that other cloud vendors had, or like, I guess other LLM vendors had made. So I don't know. So again, that's just one data point too. So it's like, again, I think we have to, I think as we talked about last week, like no one knows anything. So let's just slowly watch, like, because it will either be replicated or it won't.
I think some of the other technical analysis has said like they have done a lot of efficiency improvements, and in the stuff they've open sourced, the people are like digging through that, and they're postulating like this is going to allow us to do even better on latest gen hardware, and which you're like, oh, so who's that good for? Like that's still kind of tops off NVIDIA. It blunts the need to charge ahead with always the latest. It does mean if you can afford the latest, you can get the most performance out of it. I mean, definitely that's there, but it also opens up a wider market where, this, 2 generations previous stuff is still really useful and valuable to a larger consumer base. So Jevons paradox has gotten thrown around a lot. And there's something to that. As a price, as something becomes more ubiquitous. Yeah,
making the case for Jevons paradox, like, hey, now that everybody can do it, everybody needs a little bit more.
But my investment theory to getting out of NVIDIA was like, yeah, that's true, but it also means like all the competitors can catch up and enjoy that bigger pie. Right.
I think you went over your spreadsheet last week, which is basically just like I've made so much money off of this that like whatever the risk is not worth it, right? So like now,
I was like, it's time to take your winnings.
We should revisit rule 1. No one knows anything, including Matt Ray. Do not trade on Matt Ray's advice. He probably trade on my advice. He probably has no idea what he's talking about.
Well, let me try.
He's right. We don't know.
I want to, in my head, this is the way I've filed away and summarized this whole big incident. And let me tell you, people at Config Management Camp, lots of them were just like, that was the craziest shit I've ever seen. They're just like all over this is a big deal. And I think maybe this is one of the few times when the almighty shareholder just freaked the fuck out and just should have like gone back to bed. And like things just went wacky. It didn't make sense. And as a technologist, right? Like you're like, yeah, that's great. That's how technology works. And now we're going to use a lot more of it. And you still need all the stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it seems like maybe, because I think the key explanation, I don't know if the semi people covered this or if it was just Ben Thompson's recollections, is like, well, they published this back in December in some PDF. And it's only since they actually released an app and then the hype cycle, the conversation cycle began that this was affected. So, what that means is that it's just because normies, if you will, were paying attention and freak out ensued.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it's fine. It's just sort of like maybe this is more of a comms issue than it's really like any sort of like actual product issue that you have. And it just means you can do more.
But maybe does this bring us back to a little bit around the Google stuff that was kind of so well documented by Ben Thompson, and at least I guess the CFO said something like they were, if you will, demand constrained or fulfillment constrained, right? They had plenty of demand, they just couldn't fulfill it, and it's like, and so I guess the numbers were they came in at this is GCP came in at 11.96 billion against what they were projected to be 12.19 billion. So again, we should all have these problems. But like I don't know. It comes back to me. I'm just sort of like I don't know. There's a note here on another subject later. It talks about like toxic positivity, and I don't know if there's like a corollary to like earnings calls. It's like, really, you didn't make this money because you didn't have enough AI hardware, and that's where all this money was left. It's like it feels a little bit like that. Just feels very convenient. I don't know. When I hear that, I don't know what to say. I don't want to say like that's a lie, but I just feel like
Well,
there's like maybe more truth. There's more to be said on that subject that they're not sharing.
When I was listening to it, I was interested to have an explanation of like, well, you think you would have heard people saying that like I can't, like I try to run some query against Gemini and it says no. Right? Like because that's what it would imply, right? Or I guess what it could imply, it could be more complicated. It could say like, well, when we put together the sales plans for this quarter, we told them the plan could have been, 5% higher per rep, but we knew we didn't have capacity, so we were like, whoa, don't sell that. Like you go out there, you just make your number and don't sell above it because we can't fulfill capacity. And so, the assumption being that like you can just tell your reps a number and they'll do it. Right. Mm-hmm. That there's not some, a market demand that drives that. But it does seem like there probably is some complex machinations going on to say that we could have sold more if we had more to sell. But then you don't really hear like, it'd be the equivalent of like if HEB, they don't do this because they're private, but if they did the numbers and they're like, well, there just wasn't enough flour to make the tortillas people wanted to buy. That's why people would go in there and the shelves would be empty. Sorry. Like, what are you going to do? Tariffs.
Right. But I think what you hit on there would be like, we would like maybe tortillas is not a good example. Eggs are a better example. Like eggs, like you go to Costco in the United States right now, there are no eggs. So it's very clear that there's not enough eggs to fill demand, at least for Costco. Right. So
not enough AI eggs.
Whereas I haven't done this. So this is always a little dangerous to say this when you haven't done it, but I just feel like if I went to GCP right now and I was like, I need to spin up some AI stuff, I feel like it would work. Maybe you would say that like, I feel like maybe you'd say like, well, I'm not like trying to buy enough, which is true. Like I can't like, try to like spin up a $30,000 cluster or something, but it just feels like it's there. That's why I'm always feel like there's this weird, like the CFO just makes it sound like just what you said. It's like, well, just couldn't, like we didn't have eggs. We couldn't sell it. Where I'm like, I don't know. I feel like at any point during this quarter, if I had gone there, it would have worked. Right.
I have one more scenario. It could be that there were several key deals where someone wanted to buy a big block of a lot of AI.
Yeah.
And they were like, can't do it. Okay. And so therefore they missed out on like huge deals because they couldn't guarantee.
Yeah. The ELA, if you will, the huge. Okay. That's fair. Right.
And so like some giant bank was like, hey, we need 200 million of Gemini. And they're like, whoa, sorry. Even Costco doesn't have that many eggs.
Got it. Okay. That would be a good explanation.
I could see that, but which means like all of us small fries with our 30K deals can fit in no problem. But if you're hunting whales, you can't land those. But
it's a classic bin packing problem, and your eggs just all over.
So they're packing their bins, but they're saying we need bigger bins.
Well, quick aside, I just wondered, Cote, you mentioned somewhere on here that you're using OpenAI Canvas and you like it, which I do too. I was wondering on the Gemini side, I recently, because I liked OpenAI stuff so much, I went ahead and did a month subscription of Gemini, thinking like it would be like Canvas, but actually in Google Docs, which is great. Then I don't have to like cut and paste right between the two, like get it the way I want. And but my experience with Gemini, very underwhelming. Like it just does not do, like, I don't know. I just feel like the OpenAI Canvas, like I'm just like working on the doc and chatting, and it's like it's figuring. It kind of knows what I want to be done, whereas like the Google thing's like, oh, we can't update your document. Like they'll tell you on the side, like here's the rewritten version, and then they'll paste it. There's a little clip, like, but they'll just paste it right in there. They won't do any like, no, I don't want to paste it in. I want you to like replace the thing that you were rewriting, whereas, so I just wanted to get your, maybe, and again, I'm always like, am I using this right? Like, it doesn't feel like Canvas. Maybe I'm missing it. Have you had any similar experience to that?
Well, I haven't used Gemini for 2 months, I think, maybe even longer, because I mean, I think I started using it maybe in the spring of past year. So I gave it lots of opportunities, and it just like everyone has the same reaction. I ask people this all the time. It's just I think the word you might want to use is milquetoast. It's just very boring and kind of weak sauce. It seems it's weird, right? Like it's the only bigger disappointment in the AI space is Apple Intelligence, where you're just like, I guess they were busy replicating Evite instead of like working on how they're going to do this. But like, it just like, yeah, I expected so much, and like everything you said, and it just doesn't really satisfy. And man, Gemini is the worst at playing D&D. Like, and I think it's also like my theory, and
But what about
maybe
just
this,
like, what if I can find you to just document editing? Because I thought for
No.
sure it would be the best because of the
Yeah.
docs. When I feel like it's not even close.
well,
to being the best,
you've got two things there, right? I don't think anyone has figured out the right user experience for document editing, right? So this is a little bit of a preview, you know, because I don't want to come up with a new one. It might be in recommendations, but I have been using Canvas a lot recently, and I don't like their UI thing, but it's okay. Like, it's like, one thing you notice is it's very important that they have versioning in it, so you can go back and look at the history. Because if you don't realize that, the way Canvas and OpenAI works is you write a document or you write something and it opens that up into an editable window, and then you can highlight things and tell it what you want. You can do the whole thing, and then this part's pretty cool. Good job, HTML nerds. But like, you go in there and it highlights the thing that it's going to fix, and then you can watch it kind of like spelling out, putting the new characters for the thing. And as a writer, at first that's alarming, because you're like, whoa, what if I don't like it? Right? Like, where's my text going? But you know, you can go back and do things, but there's still something that doesn't quite feel right. But I think, yes, what you want is like, because eventually they've got it right there. They've got a copy paste button, and you're just going to put it in Google Docs, right? That's where it's going to go.
right?
And so like, I don't even know what the experience would be like in Google Docs. And then to be comprehensive, you know, you use the Apple Intelligence writing tools, and they're just obviously some sort of HP Lovecraft gibbering beast out in space. and like, you highlight something, and whatever that, you know, out of the 5 types of windows that you have on any OS, some strange window pops up, and it tells you the text that it's going to replace it with, and you can select replace, and then it'll just dump there and replace it.
No, you're kind of getting to, I guess, what I was going to say. It really, you know, UI really matters here, because I agree. I think Apple Intelligence is kind of the worst, because it's just like, you're kind of highlighting things, and it's just doing things randomly, and it's like there isn't any way to like go back and version.
And there's no history. Like, it's crazy.
So that one's sort of like the worst. I would say Google Docs better, because it has a chat, like a window, so you can see what's going on, but it doesn't like really engage the document very well. Canvas to me is probably the best, because it'll let you go back and forth, and it will kind of like edit the document for you and give you the versions.
Right.
So I think that's really good. And then of course the gold standard, which is, this is cheating, is Cursor. Cursor for coding is like, this works exactly the way you want. It's like, do you think I should do all that? Makes all the changes, highlights all the diffs, let you go through, accept all. I mean, it's like magic. So that's just the coding side of it in there.
That's what I was going to get to, is I guess what I don't know if I would like this, but I guess the next thing I would want to see in like Google Docs is put it into suggest mode, and just do the thing where you like, you know, you mark up all the changes, and then you can go through, and just like you're saying, you can accept or reject changes, right? And then it would also be interesting, like when I go and edit people's document, right? Like, you know, I might make minor changes, but if I make a big change to text, I often add a comment to that suggest change explaining what I'm doing, right? And that would be interesting if you in Google Docs, put it in suggest mode, and then, you know, you've got the red line and then the green part that's like the new stuff.
Yeah.
Putting
So maybe that's what we need. Maybe someone of the listeners can write in. Maybe, is there like a Cursor version for writing? And what's the best version of that? Like, maybe we just haven't found what it is. There must be, you know, given so many AI companies out there, it must exist somewhere. We just haven't seen it.
Yeah. But the Gemini stuff, so it's so weird. I don't know what's going on with it. It should be fantastic. But
it should be better. Definitely should be better.
Maybe we should get a Notebook ML podcast where you get the two hosts to talk about this phenomena, and you know, we'll see how that comes out. We could play that maybe come December when we need episodes, we'll just slap that in there.
Oh, well, do you think that they're like, I mean, I hate to say this, but there's probably AI slot podcasts already out there based on that format, right?
Oh, well, I haven't checked in a while, but when it back in the fall, when it reached its zenith, there was a D&D YouTube channel that was just that, and they would do AI generated pictures, and then it would be the two co-hosts talking with each other, and they'd be like, this episode Strap on your long sword and gird your loins. We're talking about goblins. And it was
wow,
great stuff.
That sounds so horrible. I want to get off the internet.
Like all things applying AI to D&D, I think it was an early way to kind of like do some futurology on how you would apply this stuff, right? You could you get a sense of how that could apply to kind of any domain that is very well documented. Well, I think we made some promise that I forget if we weren't gonna track it or if we were gonna see major check-ins. But I think the what do you call it when is it a bellwether, an early indicator, a flagship of a trend, a leading indicator? Is that what it is? I don't know.
A touchstone.
I think maybe
a highway marker.
When we look at the work from home, the return to office thing, I think Dell is the 2025 touchstone. It's like it's the indicator that we're going to look at to see where the trends are going. And I think kind of like the chart that I put together about which inning we're in. I think Brandon has collected together what everyone's been thinking this week, because apparently we're going to work back. Well, let's work forward. The year is, I guess it's a month, but the date is sometime in August 2020. And you basically, I think, what's his first name? Is it Jim Clark? As I recall, he used to work in QA in the factory, eventually came up. He's more or less number 2 at Dell, the COO. And he said 60% of the people who are working from home, they're not going to be coming back to the office regularly, right? Like, and I was reminded this back in the COVID days. There was this sense of like, it works. I don't think they're coming back to the office. Then we fast forward March 2024. And this was, I think we covered this at the time, that Dell had this policy of work in the office or you don't get promoted, right?
Yeah.
Like your career's over.
And people were okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that seemed to be the feedback, because everyone was like, didn't think I was going to get a promotion in the first place. Like it.
I got a paycheck. What more do I need?
And then this month, well, I guess it's last month by 5 days. It looks like they're totally entering the hybrid thing. And they're like, we got a new deal for you. Not only you're not going to get promoted, fire yourself if you don't want to come into the office. I'm sure they got a nice package and things like that. But I think this might be the first major thing, is that we'll see if it goes to the other tech companies. They're all about, you got to come back to the office 5 days a week. Now, I think the other thing, I think maybe this is not in the storm of everything else, not so appreciated, that this idea of return to office in the tech world is thoroughly infecting itself into the U.S. federal government. Lots of that stuff going on. So I think we've got a mainstreaming of this trend, and I got to feel that, like, if we got Dell over here, we got the federal government over here. This is some sort of fashion transition. We're going from like big pants to skinny pants to big pants. Like, I think we might be at a tipping point for going either way. Now, on the other hand, if this whole new federal government situation doesn't work out well, I think it's going to taint the return to office. They're going to be like, listen, they made them return to offices, and the Hoover Dam burst. So obviously,
yeah,
you got to work from home.
I was about to say, like, our RTO is one of the smallest things that are going wrong right now in the federal government. So, like, sure, whatever. You could throw that in there, but also like the fact that maybe nobody will get paid and Medicare is shut down. Sure, whatever. RTO.
Well, back on the Dell thing, I did think the one thing I always try to think about, like, if we're going to talk about, like, can we move the conversation forward? And I obviously know plenty of friends that work in Dell, just being in Austin. So obviously a lot of people disappointed, but I think, the way to kind of think of it is sort of like, and I'm stealing this phrase from some other author, is sort of like, one of the types of quote wealth that's not monetary, not money in some ways, it's just time wealth. And I think that's really what comes down here. It's like, when you're forcing these people back into the office, you basically are taking away some time wealth from them. Basically, a commute they didn't have to do, a little flexibility at their house, probably to do some type of like taking care of kids or picking up their kids at school. And then you can even go further. It's like, what is it worth to, like, as all parents kind of know to often learn, it's like, as your kids get older, sometimes like that 15 minutes in the car is like the best time to be with your kids. Like, they'll kind of like tell you what's going on, and they're engaged and they'll want to go on. So it's like, there's kind of like a time, it's like, that's kind of what's like underlying all this. It's sort of like, it's not just like, oh, I have to go in the office, I'm inconvenienced, is you're actually physically taking from something from me that I really value. It's just like if they came out the next day and was like, everyone takes a 10% pay cut or something like that, or 20% pay cut. Like you'd really feel that, right? And I think that's what a lot of these people are feeling. It's like, oh, I just taken this huge wealth cut. And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I don't think companies are going to stop doing it, but it doesn't like really, it's hard, I think, at companies, right? Because you'll often hear like, everyone, hey, come to work and, we're here for you. And there's like all these things, HR and, at least here in the United States, they're always talking about your benefits and like taking care of yourself and, all these things, but you're just like, oh, but you kind of see, like you hear that on one end and then you're like, what I really like is I like this commute time back. And they're just like, well, you can't have that. But if you want, you can go to the webinar. We're going to talk about like how you can be calm and what kind of exercises you can do to like keep fit. Right. And you're like, oh, what I really like is just be home taking a walk, So it's a real struggle, I think, between the like, like what you're kind of exposed to at work, right? Kind of back to that toxic positivity, like what you're kind of like see and then what you actually can do. And so that's why I think a lot of people like this, like sort of react to it poorly.
Yeah. And you hit we've said this before, but the other thing that you hit on is like, it is something you were given and now it's being taken away.
Yeah.
Right? With seemingly nothing given in return. Right. So,
and maybe to be fair to the executive side, and like, this is the other part is like, I think we just kind of getting to, it's like, I don't know, we'll call it executives just do not feel like they can effectively manage without having more control. Like now we can debate whether that's really true or not, but like there's clearly a feeling amongst executives that like they just can't do it, right? I mean, they just cannot do it. So it's like, so it's kind of, I get it. And I don't even think it's something, it's like an opinion that can't be, it's like, I like pizza. Like you can't really debate it with somebody. It's like, once they've decided that, it's like, well, like, what are you going to say? Right.
I mean, I think that is a little bit of the new thing also to add to this is like, there is some kind of like, there's something that drives these executives crazy about people working from home. It's just like, they must just wake up with their jet lag in the middle of the night. And they're just like, we got to do something about this. Just somehow, it kind of amounts to like, somehow they think someone is taking their money, right? Like there's something wrong with letting people work from home. Like, I guess they're not productive enough. It's something must be driving them batty. Because, we've seen all of the papers that are just like, doesn't really matter. Right. And so who knows? Just as they say on the Oxide and Friends podcast, it's just a dress code. It's just, choose what you want to do. We'll see how it pans out.
Absolutely.
Now you mentioned great article shared by Richard Seroter, friend of the podcast, from one of his favorites, Harvard Business Review, HBR, as us insiders like to call it, because we don't like to spend a lot of time saying the full name of things. We got walks.
we'd rather spend minutes explaining the name.
That's right. And I think I went back and reread this ahead of the show, and I missed the best part. But let me give an overview. It was saying like, hey, you might be too positive at work, especially if you're in management. You might have toxic positivity where you're always trying to point out the bright side of things. You kind of move on to like talking about how things are actually good. And I think the first half is like this sort of like multi-decade realization that we're going through in personal communications, especially on the what would be the proper phrasing, the identifying as male side of the communication thing, which is like sometimes, oftentimes, perhaps frequently times, when people are expressing a negative emotion, they just want you to be like, listen to them and kind of help them like be fine. And, I think like you two, I was raised in a generation where saying we probably heard a lot said very sarcastically was like, what, you need a hug? Right. And I think the answer to that is like, yes, everyone needs a hug all the time. It's great. Right. So like, you can kind of come from that perspective of like, it's good to not just be dismissive of people like saying it's a bad situation by saying it's actually great. You should not feel so poorly. So you don't want to have that. You want to deploy this thing of just listening to people and helping them out. But I think the best part that I missed, very practical, I like a practical tip, is that if you find yourself frequently posting positive things on LinkedIn, you're probably doing it wrong. And I wanted to run that by you two, in the form of a question. How many times a day do you think management can post something positive on LinkedIn?
Oof.
That is a very difficult question. I don't know. I think it's maybe less than a day, like less than once a day.
Oh,
right?
it's the 0.3 times? Is that
I'd
what
probably
you're
be
going
into
for?
some kind of fraction. I think, I always think like the LinkedIn stuff should be, if you're going to do it, it's something that you think should be like very externalized, right? So something that doesn't work at your company will get a lot of value of it, right? I hope that's number one in there. And then number two, it's like, I guess if you have some incredible back-to-back moments that you feel like you need to share, then great. But it's when you see people doing it, multiple times a day, it does feel a little forced, which I think, which this article, that was like the one that really jumped out at me is like, yeah, finally someone, it was like, it's like everything that's good that's written, something just confirmation bias, like, oh, I've often felt this way. Oh, they wrote it down. I love this thought. Right. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I mean, back in the early days of social media, like, Twitter 2010 or whatever, it would have been, I felt like I needed to read my entire feed, right? Oh, what's happened in the last 24 hours? I'll just go back and I'll, everything I missed. And, eventually that slowly fell off. LinkedIn has never felt like that. LinkedIn has always just been like, what's on? Oh God. There's just so much noise. And I don't know why so many people feel they need to make more noise, but yeah, it's lost a lot of signal. And I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if LinkedIn is that, platform or not, but good Lord, it's too noisy.
I don't know if they have an API, but like that is like, I think I've mentioned this over the years at some point, but there would be a great client that I'm going to tentatively call the shit sprayer, and you could put like a LinkedIn feed in there. Maybe we're going to use DeepSeek so it's efficient, but you're basically just going to say, hey AI, remove all the LinkedIn stuff from my LinkedIn feed, and just because every now and then there's something interesting in there, and just show me that. Like that would be great if you could filter feeds like that. There's a couple of new apps out.
I don't even know what I'm looking for when I log into LinkedIn. I'm like, why? I mean, I want to see like my friends are getting new jobs. That's about it.
I was gonna say that to me is the number one thing. The thing that you want to know is like when someone has moved and gone to another company and gotten a new job for whatever reason. Because one, if you're linked to them, you're probably just generally interested, like a social kind of thing. Like, and if you see them next time, you can talk about it. Two, from a professional context, you're just like, oh, well, they're at this new place. Maybe that is something, maybe we can work together some way because that's related to what I do. So like, to me, those are like, that's the number one thing people are looking for. Like everything else about like, the sales kickoff being great, or the marketing offsite was fantastic, or, thanks so-and-so for being such a great, it's like, okay, like that other stuff doesn't add, that feels like it's performative, to use the word of the, I don't know, the year, that stuff. And that's where it's like, yeah, I'd prefer not to see it because there's really nothing for me to know about that.
Yeah. Maybe it is just, I don't, the only thing I'll say is like when I post content to LinkedIn, it usually is the best performing content.
True. People are looking. That's a good point. And that's why everyone should follow the Software Defined Talk LinkedIn page, which has nothing but good things that you should read, like episodes that we're on or podcasts that we're on. So follow us. Speaking
of nothing but good things, Brandon, do we have any bureaucracy?
Well, we did get some listener feedback. I'm actually turning this back over to, I'm going to start with Matt. Warren Young wrote in, and he had some comments about the .bashrc file and the .bash profile file. So I want to give you an opportunity to clarify anything that you may or may not have said last week.
I think I quickly overgeneralized. Oh, one's interactive, one's not interactive. That's not exactly right. We'll link to the link in the show notes. There are finer distinctions than that.
We had our friend ChatGPT write up a little differences, and we appreciate Warren for kind of checking in with us and explaining the difference. So,
yes, if you need to know, you'll follow the link.
If you need to know, you can go read it. And
I looked at your ChatGPT thing, and I thought I would dig a little deeper, which I'm not going to go over because I wanted to ask why. Like, why do you have this stuff? And basically, one of them executes when you kind of like log in for the first time. I'm going to mess it up. The other one like also executes whenever you have like a brand new shell that you do or not. It's very confusing. And it actually kind of like made sense from an efficiency standpoint. Like there's a certain set of things that you only want to execute once for all shells or whatever you want to call it that you have. And so I get it. But the funny thing about every time I ask ChatGPT to do it more, the last thing it would say is commonly people source the bash RC file in the bash profile thing. So it was basically just like, given all of that, people always just execute both.
Do both. Given all that, do both is what the answer was. All right. Well, hopefully
it makes sense. I see why you would have two.
Hopefully that clears up anything on the command line, if you will. And then finally, on a much lighter note, if you would like a sticker, all you have to do is send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. I will be happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world.
Well, there's a lot of conferences to go over. There's CVO Navigate North America, February 10th and 11th in San Francisco. DevOps Days LA and Scale 22X, which I'm not going to be at. Too bad. March 6th to 9th in lovely. Where is it, Matt Ray? Sacramento? No, not Sacramento. Pasadena. It's outside of Pasadena. There you go. I knew it was LA, not LA. Very nice place there, Pasadena. You can get a discount if you use the code DevOps, singular. I'll be at the VMUG Netherlands March 12th. My coworker Deshaun will be there too, if you enjoy Deshaun. DevOps Day Chicago is March 18th as well. I'll be at SRE Day London March 27th and 28th, and then also the Monkey Gross the next day, March 27th and 28th in London. There's Cloud Foundry Day US May 14th, hosted by us, Broadcom, VMware, Tanzu. At our Palo Alto offices, May 14th, in DC, Oslo, where I'll be speaking May 21st to 23rd. And finally, KubeCon EU in London, April 1st to 4th. It's good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, Matt Ray, what do you have to recommend this episode?
My good stuff is, I went and saw the Flaming Lips last weekend. And my recommendation is, go out and see more live music. But if they're coming to your town, go see them. It's always one of the best shows I see. So they go all out. There was easily an inch deep of confetti on the ground by the end of it. Lights, confetti, fog machines. It was insane. Wow. So highly recommended.
It sounds like the old days.
It was like the old days. Yeah. I was reminisced over the time I saw them in like a tiny club, and they turned on their fog machines 10 minutes before they started, and you couldn't see anything. It was just, you could barely breathe. There was so much of that sugar fog in the air. It was, but it was an amazing show. They're all amazing shows. Go see them.
How about yourself, Brandon? When you're not bumping into people, when you are bumping into people in the sugar fog, or you're not doing that, I've messed it up. What do you have to recommend?
Yeah, no sugar fog here. What I'm recommending this week is I got a Blackstone griddle. So I don't know, are you guys griddle people or are you grill people? Or do you not care?
Not care.
Well, I have a griddle, but it's for the stovetop. It's just an old round cast iron thing that I use to heat up tortillas and things like that.
Yeah, well, I got there's a link here. I got the big griddle, and I replaced the grill, so it's out on the deck, and I actually quite like it. It is surprisingly how convenient it is to just have a giant surface to just cook a bunch of stuff. I've taken to cooking instead of going to Chipotle and spending all the money, I'll just cook a whole bunch of chicken thighs at once, and it's like super easy. And I was like, oh, I should have gotten a griddle a long time ago. We had a grill. In fact, we're giving away the grill because I was like, I never really used the grill to grill. I just kind of used it as like a big cooking service. So I like it. So if you're looking for another, outdoor grill kitchen gadget, I would recommend the Blackstone. So check that out. And then of course you can get into the, watch all the YouTube videos about how do you season your griddle, which is that is a, if you will, a rabbit hole you can go down that has no end. There's no end to that. So if you like doing that kind of stuff, get a griddle.
I like the cast iron and the other the carbon steel, and I'm guessing griddle people who are just like, there's two types of people who use this: people who wash it with soap and people who don't.
There's nothing better. I was about to say, you think there's a lot of discussions about like logon shells and scripts? Like you've never seen a passionate discussion like you have about, do you use water and soap on cast iron or do you not? You want to see emotion? You want to see something that brings the true person out? Get yourself in a message board about that.
And then there's always the one crazy person who washes it with salt, and you're just like, I don't know what's up with you.
Like, who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah. You know, I haven't watched it in a while, but you watch those calming multi-hour videos of short order cooks using like an industrial griddle. It just looks like a lot of fun, just frying up eggs like there's no tomorrow. It's good stuff. Well, I've already recommended. You know, I think I understand the point of Canvas now. I've used it. I think it's pretty good. But I've got two other things. Since we already talked about that, like I said, I was in Ghent, and I always forget, even though I eat them a lot. Belgian waffles in Belgium are actually this whole other experience that you don't have, just because they have the waffles once cooked enough, and then somehow they put some sort of sugary coating on it, and then they put it in the waffle iron again, making sure to line up the slots. And by doing that, you get this crispy, sugary thing on the outside. Oh, so good.
So good.
Like, you're not going to get that at Costco, unfortunately. So you got to get it in Belgium. And the other thing, just a recommendation and a thank you to Alex Williams from Portland, Oregon. Now, he sent me this zine. Remember zines? Called Couches. And we'll put a link to it in the show notes, which is going to be at softwaredefinedtalk.com/505. I don't think you can order it online. I think you have to be in the Portland area. But much like my kind of winnowing obsession with Garbage Shares of Amsterdam, this person went around Portland and he found pictures of garbage couches, and he made a little zine of just his pictures of the garbage couches. So, you know, as an aficionado of the single seat version of this, I guess my version is very European in that it's smaller, the chair, and
love seats.
It suits just one person, where this is the American version. It's a big, gigantic suburban equivalent of house furniture. But very good work from Christopher Michael McMurray. Love that stuff. So check that out if you're in the Portland, Oregon area. See if you can get your hands on that zine. Now, speaking of things that you can get your hands on, no matter where you are, whether you're in Portland, Oregon, Portland, Maine, or Portland everywhere on Earth, you can always listen to Software Defined Talk. Now, you've already listened to it, or you skipped ahead for some reason, or maybe someone in your family, a roommate, is listening to this out loud, and you're like, thank God this is almost over, because then I get to listen to my podcast about people who murder each other or politics. It's going to be so much better. You know, nonetheless, you could always go to softwaredefinedtalk.com and figure out how to subscribe. Or, you know, you could say, why do you listen to people joking about, you know, people murdering people? That maybe doesn't seem like a healthy way to live your life.
No more murders.
Don't listen to murder podcasts. Listen to softwaredefinedtalk.com. Now, there's a lot of things we mentioned, including that couches thing, the griddle, other stuff. If you want to get all sorts of links, you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/505. You can find those links. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Well done, as always. Thanks for everyone watching on the stream here. Good to see Brett and, I don't know, is it Avon? I don't know how to say it. I always wonder how to say the names out loud. So always really good. Cote, before we go, we'll do a quick question on one of the after show things. As a former liberal arts major, I thought of you this week when I read this note from one of the JP Morgan analysts. It was about Tesla, about the earnings. Did you have a chance to review this?
I saw Benedict Evans posted it. I saw that one little part, but I didn't read the entire PDF.
All right. Well, I throw it out only because I think this is some of the funniest, driest, and when I say that, sort of a very dry written analysis, and that was what he pasted it out. So if you have not seen it, it's in the show notes. You can click on it, and it's just a funny little note about you know, Tesla's earnings and like. and where the analyst basically says there is no reason the stock should have gone up, and it went up, but he just says it in a very funny way. So I always think it's like it's a frustrated liberal arts major who's a great writer who's like, you know what, I'm about to break out some of my writing skills because why not? This is the time.
Yeah, I'm just going to read the first line because I think it is maybe. I'm sure I don't read a lot of financial and stuff. There maybe after all these years, there is a better line, but this is definitely maybe the line of the year. And it almost achieves economist dry wit, but you can tell they have to go back to financial analyst talk. So it kind of ruins it. But it says, it's not clear to us why Tesla shares traded as much as 0.5% higher in the aftermarket Wednesday, although we have some leading theories. So I think when you have the financial analysts at JPMC being like, it's not clear to us. Like they must have spent a lot of time before they were like, we don't know what the fuck's going on over here, you know, and or just as Benedict Evans pointed out, he was like, I think that was just a lot of words for them to say, fuck this bullshit. And so,
well,
like,
they probably had similar writings around like the GameStop stuff.
Oh yeah, that
because then they were like, you know, this is stupid, and it's like, why is this still happening, right? I mean, it was right, but the stupidity led them out of their hole, which is
I think maybe the best line ever in a financial thing would just be like it would be a 1-page earnings analysis, and it would have one line. It would be like, just look up whatever Matt Levine writes about this, and that would be it.
Yes, I do feel like, I don't know, I didn't see a Matt Levine wrote about this yet. I haven't had a chance to look at his newsletter, but I'm like, this person, whoever it is, should they decide they're tired of being an investment analyst, they're probably headed for a good newsletter career, maybe at Bloomberg, maybe somewhere else. It was really well written. I loved it. So, all right. Well, with that, everyone, you can go read up on that, and we will hopefully be streaming next week about this time. Until then, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.